What happens when the weakest wolf in the pack discovers she was never weak at all? For Elara Moonstone, life had always been measured in whispers and averted eyes. As the only Omega daughter of Beta parents in the Silvercrest pack, she'd learned early to make herself small, to fade into corners during ceremonies, to bow her head when Alphas passed. But when Alpha Cade Thornridge stood before 300 wolves beneath the harvest moon and severed their fated bond with a single cruel sentence, everything changed. And what happens next? No one was prepared for. The ceremony had been perfect until it wasn't. Elara could still smell the pine smoke from the bonfire, the rich earth beneath her bare feet, the excitement of 200 wolves gathered in the sacred clearing. The air hummed with ancient power as the moon goddess's light bathed the assembled pack in silver. This was the night fated mates would be revealed, bonds recognized, futures sealed. She hadn't expected anything. Omegas rarely received the goddess's blessing of a fated mate. Such bonds were reserved for those with power, with status, with something to offer the pack's future. But then the shift had happened inside her, sudden and undeniable. The invisible thread that connected her soul to another's had blazed to life, pulling her attention across the clearing to the raised platform where Alpha Cade stood in all his terrible glory. He was magnificent. Even she, who had trained herself not to look directly at Alphas, couldn't help but stare. 6'4" of pure dominant power. Dark hair falling across a face carved from granite and starlight. His scent hit her like a physical force, forest and embers, ozone and steel, the smell of storms and authority. His eyes, wolf gold and ancient, had locked onto hers across the distance. The bond snapped into place. Time stopped. Every wolf in the clearing felt it. The surge of power that announced a true fated pairing. Conversations died. Heads turned. Even the oldest wolves, who had seen centuries pass, drew sharp breaths. An alpha and an omega, fated by the moon goddess herself. It should have been impossible. It should have been beautiful. Elara's wolf stirred within for the first time she could truly remember, rising with a strength that made her gasp. The bond was golden and terrible, filling every empty space inside her with warmth and belonging. She took a trembling step forward, her body moving without conscious thought, drawn to her mate as inexorably as the tide to the moon. Cade descended the platform steps, and for one crystalline moment, hope bloomed in Elara's chest. Perhaps the goddess had a plan. Perhaps her life was about to change in ways she'd never dared imagine. Then she saw his face. His expression wasn't wonder or joy or even surprise. It was fury. Pure, cold rage that turned his eyes to chips of ice. No. The word cracked across the clearing like a whip. Elara stumbled, the rejection in his voice sending physical pain lancing through the new bond. Around her, wolves murmured in shock. Fated bonds were sacred, gifts from the moon goddess herself. To reject one was to spit in the face of destiny. Cade stalked toward her, and Elara's wolf whimpered, confused by the hostility radiating from what should have been her safe harbor. He stopped 3 feet away, towering over her, and the scent of ozone intensified until the air itself felt charged with violence. I, Cade Thornridge, Alpha of the Silvercrest Pack, reject you, Elara Moonstone, as my fated mate. His voice carried to every corner of the clearing, formal and final as a death sentence. I will not be bound to weakness. I will not saddle this pack with an Omega Luna. The moon goddess made a mistake. The bond began to tear. Elara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The golden thread connecting them started to fray, and the pain was beyond anything she'd imagined. It felt like her soul was being ripped in half, like every nerve in her body had been set on fire. She collapsed to her knees. A scream tearing from her throat that was more wolf than human. I accept your rejection, she managed to gasp, because the alternative was worse. A bond held by only one side was a poison that would kill her slowly. The thread snapped. The sound was audible, a crack like lightning striking that reverberated through the supernatural plane every wolf could sense. Ilara crumpled completely, her body convulsing as the severed bond tried to find something to connect to and found only empty air. Blood ran from her nose, her ears. Her vision swam with black spots. Through the haze of agony, she was dimly aware of movement around her. Not help, never help. Judgment. Disgust. Remove her, Cade ordered, his voice flat and emotionless now that the deed was done. An Omega without even the strength to bear a rejection has no place in my pack. Take her beyond our borders. She's banished. Strong hands gripped her arms. Warriors, beta guards who served the Alpha without question. They hauled her upright, though her legs wouldn't support her weight, dragging her toward the eastern edge of the clearing. Faces blurred past. Some showed pity. Most showed relief that it wasn't them. And a few, including Luna Marissa, the beautiful daughter of the Pack's second, who'd been angling for Cade's attention for years, showed satisfaction. Marissa's scent reached her even through the pain. Cinnamon and iron, and something sharp like fresh blood. Finally, the other woman purred, though whether to Ilara or to the world at large, she couldn't tell. The pack will be stronger, without dead weight. Ilara's parents stood near the back of the crowd. Her mother's hand covered her mouth. Her father's face was carefully blank. She tried to catch their eyes, tried to plead silently for them to speak up, to defend her, to do something. They had been good parents once, or so she'd thought. Strict, yes, and distant, but not cruel. Her mother looked away. Her father stepped back into the shadows. The guards dragged her past the boundary markers, ancient standing stones that delineated the pack's safe territory from the wilderness beyond. The moment they crossed the threshold, Ilara's connection to the pack severed. Another tearing, another loss, though this one was dulled by the overwhelming agony of the broken mate bond. They dumped her in the dirt 10 feet past the stones and turned back without a word. Ilara lay there as the sounds of the ceremony resumed behind her. They were going to continue, going to celebrate while she bled and shook and tried not to shatter completely. She could hear the music start up again, the laughter, as if nothing had happened, as if she had never existed. The physical pain was subsiding slowly, leaving behind a hollow emptiness that was somehow worse. The mate bond was gone, leaving a void in her chest that echoed with loss. The pack bond was gone, leaving her unmoored and alone for the first time in her 22 years. She was nothing now. No mate, no pack, no family. Just another rogue wolf left to die in the wilderness. The night was cold. Winter was coming early this year, and the temperature had dropped with the sunset. Ilara forced herself to her hands and knees, then to her feet. She couldn't stay here, not this close to Packlands. If she died within sight of the boundary, they'd have to deal with her body. Better to spare them the inconvenience. The forest swallowed her within minutes. She walked for hours, or maybe days. Time lost meaning in the fog of pain and exhaustion. The wilderness beyond pack territories was dangerous, filled with rogues and predators and things that hunted wolves for sport. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt nothing but a distant, detached curiosity about how it would end. The storm hit on what she thought was the second night, though it might have been the third. The temperature plummeted, and snow began to fall in thick, heavy flakes that quickly built to a blizzard. Wind howled through the trees, cutting through her thin ceremony dress as if she were naked. She should shift, let her wolf form's fur protect her from the elements. But when she reached for her wolf, she found only silence. The creature that had stirred so briefly during the bonding was gone again, retreated into some deep place Alara couldn't reach. Without her wolf, she was just a human woman alone in a lethal storm. She stumbled forward anyway, because stopping meant dying right here, right now, and some stubborn part of her refused to make it that easy. The forest thinned ahead, and through the driving snow, she glimpsed a structure, ancient, half-collapsed. But it had 3 walls and part of a roof. An old barn, maybe, from before this land had been reclaimed by wilderness. Alara crawled inside on her hands and knees. The shelter was minimal, but it blocked the worst of the wind. She curled into the driest corner she could find, pulling rotted hay around herself in a futile attempt at warmth. Her body shook violently, hypothermia setting in with brutal efficiency. This was it then. This was how she died, alone in the dark, unmated and unmourned, 22 years old and utterly wasted. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, she felt only relief. At least the pain would stop. Her eyes drifted closed. The cold was almost comfortable now, a numbing embrace that promised peace. She thought she heard something outside, a howl, distant and deep, but it was probably just the wind. Everything was wind and snow and the slow shutting down of her systems. "Let go," something whispered inside her. "Let go, little one. Rest." So she did. Warmth. That was the first thing Alara registered when consciousness crept back. Warmth, where there should have been only cold and death. The second thing was breathing that wasn't her own, deep and rhythmic, surrounding her on all sides. She forced her eyes open. 10 massive wolves encircled her. Alara's breath caught. These weren't ordinary pack wolves. They were enormous, each one easily the size of a small horse. Their fur ranged from midnight black to silver white, and in the dim pre-dawn light filtering through gaps in the barn walls, their eyes gleamed with an intelligence that was almost human. No, more than human. She counted them slowly, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. 1, 2, 3. They were pressed close, their bodies forming a living barrier against the cold. 4, 5, 6. Their heat had kept her alive through the night. 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 massive wolves had surrounded her while she slept, had shared their warmth, had protected her from the storm that still raged outside. The one directly in front of her, the largest, with fur the color of aged oak and storm clouds, lifted its head. Its eyes were extraordinary, silver with flecks of gold that seemed to swirl like galaxies. When it looked at her, Alara felt power wash over her, ancient and absolute. This was an alpha. Not just any alpha. This was something far older, far more dangerous than anything she'd encountered in the Silvercrest pack. The great wolf rose to its feet in one fluid motion. Its head nearly touched the barn's broken rafters. The others remained in position, maintaining the circle, but their attention focused on their leader. Then it shifted. The transformation was nothing like the violent, bone-cracking changes Alara had witnessed at pack ceremonies. This was fluid, almost graceful. Bones flowing like water from one form to another, fur receding into skin, massive frame condensing into a tall, powerfully built man. He was perhaps 40, with dark hair shot through with silver and a face marked by scars that spoke of battles survived. His eyes remained that same extraordinary silver gold. He wore simple clothes that had somehow materialized during the shift. A dark shirt, leather pants, heavy boots. The scent that rolled off him hit her like a physical force. Aged oak, winter snow, pine, and the sharp, clean smell of a storm about to break. "Easy," he said. His voice deep and measured as Alara scrambled backward until her back hit the barn wall. "We mean you no harm." "Who?" Her voice cracked from disuse and cold. "What are you?" A slight smile touched his scarred face. "My name is Garrett Stone. As for what we are," he gestured to the 9 massive wolves still surrounding them. "We are the Shadow Guard, and we've been waiting for you, Ilara Moonstone." Her heart hammered. "How do you know my name?" "Because we've been searching for you for 22 years. Garrett moved slowly, careful not to startle her, and lowered himself to sit cross-legged a few feet away. "Since the night you were born under the blood moon, when the prophecy marked you as the one we were sworn to protect." Prophecy. The word came out barely above a whisper. I'm nobody. I'm just an Omega." Weaker than weak. No. The word was absolute, carrying the weight of unshakable certainty. "You were bound. Your power was locked away by magic so old and complex, it took us 2 decades to trace its source." His eyes held hers, and she couldn't look away. "The rejection shattered the binding, Alara. What was done to you is being undone. And when the transformation completes," he leaned forward slightly, "you will be what you were always meant to be." "I don't understand." "You will." Garrett stood, offering her his hand. "But first you need food, warmth, and rest. The storm is passing. Come with us. Let us show you who you truly are." Ilara stared at his outstretched hand. Every instinct screamed that this was impossible, that she was hallucinating from cold and trauma, that there was no prophecy, no destiny, no secret power. She was Ilara Moonstone, the Omega nobody wanted, rejected by her fated mate, and cast out by her pack. But then why had these massive wolves kept her alive? Why would 10 creatures of obvious power protect someone worthless? She took his hand. The moment their skin connected, a wave of power washed over her, so intense she gasped. Her wolf stirred again, deeper this time, rising from whatever prison had contained her. And for the first time in Alara's life, she heard her wolf speak. "We are home," the voice rumbled, ancient and strong. Finally. "We are home." Garrett's expression shifted to something like relief, like joy. "She's waking. The matriarch is waking." "Matriarch?" Ilara managed. "The mother of wolves, the first Luna, the queen of the wild." He pulled her gently to her feet. "You have many titles, Ilara Moonstone. And you're about to claim everyone." The Shadow Guard's territory was nothing like Silvercrest's manicured pack lands. This was wilderness in its purest form. Ancient forest, where trees grew so tall, their tops disappeared into mist, where clearings hummed with magic that made the air shimmer, where streams ran with water so pure it glowed faintly silver under moonlight. They traveled for 3 days, the massive wolves moving silently through terrain that would have been impassable for humans. Garrett walked beside Alara in human form, explaining gently when she had strength to listen, respecting her silence when she needed to process. The others shifted each evening, introducing themselves one by one. There was Marcus, whose wolf was black as midnight, and whose human form carried knife scars across his knuckles and a ready smile. Theron, silver-furred and serious, who'd been a pack beta before the calling came. Lyra, the only female among them, whose russet coat gleamed like copper and whose fierce loyalty radiated from every pore. They welcomed her carefully, respectfully, as if she were already the queen Garrett claimed she would become. It confused her almost as much as it comforted her. On the morning of the 4th day, They reached what Garrett called the heart, a massive clearing ringed by standing stones, far older than any pack territory marker Alara had seen. In the center stood a structure that was part temple, part fortress, its stone walls carved with symbols that seemed to shift and change when she wasn't looking directly at them. "This is our sanctuary," Garrett said as they crossed the threshold, "and it is yours, if you'll accept it." Inside, the space opened into a great hall lit by skylights and windows positioned to catch the sun. Tapestries covered the walls, depicting wolves and battles and strange celestial events. At the far end, a massive stone chair sat on a raised dais, a throne, though Alara couldn't imagine anyone she knew filling it. "I don't understand any of this," she said finally, turning to face Garrett and the assembled guard. "You keep talking about prophecies and power, but I've never been powerful. I've never even fully shifted. My wolf barely speaks to me. I can't be whatever you think I am." "Because you were bound," Garrett repeated patiently. "Sit. Let me tell you the whole truth." They gathered in a circle on the hall floor, and Garrett began to speak. 1,500 years ago, the first werewolves weren't born. They were made, blessed by the moon goddess to protect the balance between the mortal and spirit worlds. Among them was one who stood above all others, a female whose power was absolute. She was called the Matriarch, the mother of wolves, and every alpha who ever lived descended from her line. He paused, letting the words sink in. The Matriarch's power was too great for the world as civilization grew. Humans expanded, the spirit world receded, and there was no longer need for a single supreme ruler. So the line fragmented, the power diluted across thousands of wolves, and the Matriarch became legend. But the moon goddess promised that when the balance was threatened again, when wolves grew weak and lost their way, the Matriarch would return. She would be born under the blood moon, marked by the goddess herself, carrying the full strength of the original line. Alara's breath caught. "I was born during a blood moon." "Yes, and your parents knew what you were." Garrett's expression darkened. Beta Cassian and Lena Moonstone went to every pack elder, every witch, every magical creature they could find, begging for a way to bind your power. They convinced themselves it was protection, that you would be killed by ambitious alphas who feared your strength, or stolen by enemies, or corrupted by power. They found a witch willing to do the binding. It required blood magic, ancient and terrible. Your power was locked away, compressed into such a small space that even you couldn't sense it. The binding was keyed to your parents' bloodline. Only they could break it. Or, he met her eyes. A catastrophic emotional trauma could shatter it from the inside. The rejection. The words fell from her lips like stones. The fated bond is the strongest connection a wolf can experience. When Cade severed it, the psychic shock was so immense it cracked the binding. You're still transforming, still awakening. But every day you'll feel your true strength returning. Alara pressed her hands to her face. Her parents, the people who should have protected her, who should have celebrated her, had instead crippled her before she could even walk. 22 years of weakness, of shame, of being treated as less, all because they were afraid. "Where are they now?" she asked quietly. "Still in Silvercrest? Still beta to an alpha who doesn't deserve the title?" Garrett's voice carried contempt. "But that's a problem for another day. Right now, you need to focus on yourself, on learning what you can do." Over the following days, the truth of Garrett's words became undeniable. Alara could feel something shifting inside her, like a dam beginning to crack under immense pressure. Her senses sharpened until she could hear conversations a mile away, track a rabbit by scent through dense forest. Her strength increased daily. She caught herself accidentally shattering a stone cup with one hand, leaving fingerprints in a steel doorframe. And her wolf was waking. "Sister," the voice rumbled in her mind, stronger each time. "Let me out. Let me show you what we are." "I'm afraid," Alara admitted to Garrett during a training session 2 weeks after her arrival. They stood in a practice clearing, just the two of them. "What if I can't control it? What if I hurt someone?" "You won't." He moved to stand behind her, hands hovering near her shoulders without quite touching. "The matriarch's power isn't about destruction. It's about protection, about balance. Your instinct will be to defend, not attack. Trust your wolf. She's been patient for 22 years. Trust her now." Alara closed her eyes and reached inward, past the fear, past the learned helplessness of a lifetime as an Omega. She found her wolf waiting, not small or weak or frightened, but massive and patient and utterly confident. "Yes," her wolf purred. "Finally. Let go, sister. Let me rise." The shift began, but this wasn't like any transformation Alara had witnessed. There was no pain, no cracking of bones reshaping violently. Instead, it felt like falling into warm water, like surrendering to a current that knew exactly where to carry her. Her bones didn't break. They flowed, lengthening and reshaping with liquid grace. Fur emerged, not as painful prickling, but as a wave of silver white that spread across her skin like moonlight made solid. Her senses exploded outward. She could suddenly smell every plant in the clearing, track the path of a beetle underground, hear the heartbeat of a rabbit 300 yards away. And she was growing. Larger and larger, far past the size of any wolf she'd ever seen. Past alpha size, past even the Shadow Guard's impressive bulk. Energy crackled along her fur, making it glow faintly with ethereal light. Her paws left prints in the earth that smoked with residual power. When the transformation completed, Alara stood on 4 legs and looked down at Garrett. Down, because even in his impressive 6-foot frame, he only came up to her shoulder. She was immense. Mythic. Her fur caught the light like starshine, and when she moved, the air itself seemed to ripple with power. Her eyes, she could feel them glowing, blazing with a color that had never existed in the Silvercrest pack. Violet. The color of royalty, of magic, of the moon goddess herself. Her wolf lifted its head and howled. The sound shook the earth. Birds erupted from trees for miles in every direction. In the sanctuary, she sensed the Shadow Guard freeze, their attention snapping to her location. The howl wasn't just noise, it was a declaration, a claiming, a statement of existence that resonated through every supernatural creature within 100 miles. "I'm here," it said. "I am awake. I am the matriarch, and this is my territory." When the echoes finally faded, Garrett was on one knee, head bowed, a posture of absolute submission that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with recognition. "She is risen," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "The matriarch is risen." Alara shifted back to human form, another fluid, painless transformation, and found herself steady on her feet despite the magnitude of what had just happened. She felt whole, complete. For the first time in her entire life, she felt like herself. "That," Garrett said, rising with a grin that made him look years younger, "is who you really are." The weeks that followed were a revelation. Alara trained with each member of the Shadow Guard, learning to control her new strength, to shift at will, to sense the emotions and intentions of other wolves through a kind of empathic awareness that bordered on telepathy. She discovered she could heal minor injuries with a touch, sense danger from miles away, and command lesser wolves with nothing but her will. Marcus taught her combat, how to use her size as an advantage, how to fight with honor, but without mercy when necessary. Theron showed her pack politics, the intricate dance of dominance and submission that governed wolf society. Lyra became a confidant and friend, teaching her the practical realities of being female in a male-dominated hierarchy. But it was Garrett who stayed closest, who seemed to understand without words when she needed silence or conversation, challenge or comfort. The scent of aged oak and winter snow became as familiar as her own, and she caught herself seeking his presence without conscious thought. One evening, 3 weeks after her first transformation, Alara found him on the sanctuary's eastern terrace, staring out at the forest under a waxing moon. "Can't sleep?" she asked, joining him at the stone railing. "Old habit. I've kept watch for so long, I don't think I remember how to rest." He glanced at her, moonlight catching in his eyes. "You're adjusting well? Better than we dared hope." "I had good teachers." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Garrett, why did you do this? You and the guard. You've been searching for me for decades. You've sacrificed everything, your packs, your families, your lives, for a prophecy that might not even be real. Why?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. "Because we felt the wrongness. Every wolf with enough age and power could sense that the balance was tilting. Alphas becoming tyrants. Packs turning on each other. The old laws forgotten, honor abandoned. Without the matriarch, we were losing our way." He turned to face her fully. "And because the first time I heard the prophecy, truly heard it, not just the words, but the truth behind them, I knew. I knew you were real. I knew you were out there, waiting. I knew that finding you was the most important thing I would ever do." "What was the prophecy?" Alara asked. "You've mentioned it, but never recited it." Garrett's expression shifted to something reverent. He spoke, and his voice took on a rhythmic quality, as if he were reciting verses memorized long ago. "When the wolf moon bleeds, and darkness claims the throne, the matriarch will rise from ash and bone. She will be marked by silver, crowned in violet light. Born of pain and sorrow, forged in endless night. She will come when hope is lost, when wolves forget their way. She will come with ancient power, bring the balance back to sway. 10 will guard her rising, 10 will clear her path. And when she claims her birthright, all will feel her wrath. Not the rage of tyrants, not the hunger of the beast, but justice long forgotten, mercy from the east. She is mother of all wolves. She is queen of the wild. She is fierce, and she is gentle, both woman and child. When she howls, the world will tremble. When she speaks, all will hear. The matriarch is risen, and the new age is near." The words hung in the air between them, and Alara felt tears prick her eyes. That's me? That's you." Garrett reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was intimate, tender. "You asked why we did this. That's why. Because the world needs you. Because wolves need you." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Because I needed you." The bond that formed between them wasn't the violent, instant claiming of a fated mate bond. It was gentler, deeper, a choice made rather than destiny imposed. Alara felt it settle into place like the last piece of a puzzle, warm and right and completely different from the golden thread that had connected her to Cade. This was aged oak and winter snow. This was chosen, not forced. This was partnership, not ownership. Garrett, she breathed. I know. His thumb brushed her cheek. I've known since the moment I found you in that barn. But you needed time to become yourself first. To be whole and strong and certain. I would never— He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. I would never bind you before you were ready to choose freely. I choose you, Ilara said, the words emerging with absolute certainty. Not because a prophecy demands it, not because I'm grateful you saved my life, but because when I think about the future, about building this new world, I can't imagine it without you beside me. The kiss was inevitable, soft and questioning at first, then deepening as she rose on her toes, and he pulled her closer. When they finally broke apart, Ilara rested her forehead against his chest and felt his heart hammering in time with hers. The matriarch and her champion, Garrett murmured into her hair. It has a nice ring to it. She laughed, the sound surprising her with its lightness. Is that your official title now? If you'll have me, I will. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. But Garrett, there's still something I need to do. Silvercrest, Cade, my parents. I can't just leave it unfinished. His expression turned serious. I know. And when you're ready, the guard will stand with you. I'm ready now. They came for her on the autumn equinox, 6 weeks after Ilara's awakening. A scout from a neutral pack arrived breathless at the sanctuary gates with news. Silvercrest's hunting party had crossed into Shadow Guard territory, seeking information about a rogue Omega named Moonstone. They know you're alive, Marcus reported, fury in every line of his body. And they're mobilizing. Ilara stood in the great hall, the Shadow Guard assembled before her. She'd grown into her power over these weeks, carried herself now with the natural authority of someone who discovered she was born to lead. How many? She asked calmly. 25 wolves, including Alpha Cade, Beta Cassian, and Luna Marissa. Theron's lip curled with disgust. They're calling it a war party. They plan to cross the Heart's boundaries at dawn. Let them come. Ilara's voice carried absolute confidence. But we meet them at the border stones. I will not have violence in the sanctuary. The next morning, the Shadow Guard positioned themselves in a loose semicircle at the territory's edge. Ilara stood at the center, flanked by Garrett on her right and Lyra on her left. She'd dressed carefully, simple leather pants, and a tunic that allowed freedom of movement, her long silver hair braided back from her face. She wore no jewelry, no marks of rank. She didn't need them. The Silvercrest hunting party arrived exactly at dawn. Cade led them, magnificent and arrogant in his human form, surrounded by his beta and 20 warriors in wolf form. Luna Marissa walked at his side, her beautiful face twisted with anticipation. Behind them, looking smaller and older than Ilara remembered, came her parents. Cade stopped 10 feet from the boundary stones, taking in the Shadow Guard with evident calculation. His eyes found Ilara, and something flickered in their golden depths. Recognition, perhaps, or shock that she was still alive. Ilara Moonstone, he called, his voice carrying easily across the distance. You were banished from Silvercrest Pack. By law, you should be dead. Yet here you stand, surrounded by rogues, trespassing on contested territory. He smiled, cold and cruel. I've come to finish what I started. Surrender yourself, and I'll make your death quick. Ilara didn't move, didn't react. When she spoke, her voice was measured and calm. Alpha Cade Thornridge, you rejected your fated mate, cast her out to die, and now you violate neutral territory with a war party. By what law do you claim authority here? By the law of the strongest. Cade's eyes flickered to Garrett. You're an alpha, I can sense it. But you shelter a rogue and a traitor. Stand aside, and no harm will come to you or your guard. No. Garrett's voice was flat. You have no authority here. You have no idea what you're facing. Turn back, Cade Thornridge, while you still can. Marissa laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. 1 alpha and 9 warriors against 25? The math doesn't favor you. She stepped forward, her scent, cinnamon and iron and blood, intensifying with her aggression. And that pathetic Omega can't protect you. She couldn't even survive her own rejection. Is that what you think? Alara asked softly. That I'm still the weak, powerless girl you mocked? You're nothing, Marissa spat. You were always nothing. That's why he chose me over you. That's why. She shifted mid-sentence, a fluid transformation into a large, russet wolf, and lunged directly at Alara. It was a calculated move. Attack the perceived weakness, prove dominance through violence. Establish the pecking order. In the old Silvercrest hierarchy, it would have worked. Alara would have cowered, submitted, maybe died. But Alara wasn't that girl anymore. She didn't shift, didn't need to. As Marissa's wolf form hurtled toward her, claws extended and jaws gaping, Alara simply raised one hand and spoke a single word. Down. The command wasn't loud, but it carried power that made the air itself vibrate. Alpha voice amplified by the matriarch's authority, by 1,500 years of dominance compressed into one syllable. Marissa dropped like a stone, slamming into the earth 3 feet from Alara, with bone-jarring force. She tried to rise, whimpering with effort, but her body refused to obey. The command had overridden every instinct, every voluntary muscle. She lay there, helpless. As Alara walked calmly to stand over her. You're right, Alara said conversationally, looking down at the struggling wolf. I was nothing, but I'm something now. And you. She crouched, bringing her face level with Marissa's. You're going to learn the price of cruelty. She placed her hand on Marissa's head. Power flowed from Alara into the other wolf, not to harm, but to open. Every memory, every emotion, every secret shame, and hidden fear became visible, laid bare. Marissa whimpered as her own cruelty was reflected back at her. Every casual humiliation she'd inflicted, every pleasure she'd taken in others' pain. See yourself, Alara whispered. Truly, see yourself. When she lifted her hand and released the command, Marissa scrambled backward, eyes wide with horror and self-loathing. The transformation back to human was clumsy. Panicked, she knelt on the ground, shaking, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Alara turned to face the Silvercrest party. Every wolf there had felt what she'd done, sensed the magnitude of power involved. Anyone else? She asked mildly. Cade's expression had shifted from arrogance to calculation. What are you? That's not... Omegas don't have that kind of power. No, Garrett agreed, stepping up beside Alara. Omegas don't. But the matriarch does. The matriarch is a legend, Cade scoffed, though his voice held a note of uncertainty now. Was, Alara corrected. I was a legend. Now I'm standing right in front of you. She felt her guard shift behind her, not into attack position, just allowing their presence to be truly felt. And these aren't rogues, Alpha Cade. They're the Shadow Guard. The matriarch's sworn protectors. As if rehearsed, though they hadn't discussed this, hadn't planned it, all 10 members of the Guard shifted. The transformation was synchronized and devastating. One moment, 10 dangerous wolves stood behind Alara. The next, 10 massive dire wolves materialized, each one easily twice the size of Cade's largest warrior. Their power radiated like heat from a forge, ancient and absolute. The Silvercrest wolves broke formation, scrambling backward, Several dropped into immediate submission postures, instinct overriding pride. Even Cade took an involuntary step back, his alpha presence suddenly seeming small and inadequate against the wall of dominance facing him. "You made a mistake," Alara said, her voice carrying to every wolf present. "You didn't just reject a weak Omega. You severed the bond with the queen of all wolves. You cast out the very creature meant to restore balance to our kind." She took a step forward, and Cade's warriors scattered further. "And now you've brought war to my doorstep. Give me one reason why I shouldn't end you where you stand." Cade's jaw clenched. For a moment, Alara thought he might actually be foolish enough to attack. Then his shoulders slumped, his head bowed, and he dropped to one knee. "Mercy," he said, the word clearly tasting like poison. "I beg mercy, matriarch." Behind him, the rest of the Silvercrest party followed suit, all except Alara's parents, who stood frozen, staring at their daughter with expressions of dawning horror. "You bound my power," Alara said, addressing Cassian and Lena directly. "You crippled me before I could walk, condemned me to 22 years of weakness and shame. Why?" Her father found his voice first. "We were afraid. The prophecy. When the witch confirmed what you were, we thought the Alphas would kill you. Or worse. We thought we were protecting you. You thought wrong." Alara's voice could have cut steel. "You robbed me of my birthright. You stole my childhood, my strength, my confidence. You let me suffer because you were too cowardly to stand by me." She saw her mother's eyes fill with tears and felt nothing. "You broke me to keep me safe, but all you did was make me vulnerable to exactly the kind of cruelty you feared." "We're sorry," Lena whispered. "Alara, please, we're so sorry." "Your apology is noted." Alara turned her attention back to Cade. "As for you, Alpha Thornridge, you rejected the moon goddess's gift. You violated sacred law. You attempted to murder someone under the Shadow Guard's protection." She circled him slowly, and he kept his head bowed, not daring to meet her eyes. "By rights, I should strip your title and banish you as you banished me." "Please," Cade started. "But I won't." Alara's voice cut through his plea. "Because I am not you. I don't rule through fear and cruelty. I rule through justice." She stopped directly in front of him. "You will return to Silvercrest. You will tell your pack what you witnessed here. You will acknowledge your mistake publicly and release every wolf in your territory from the obligation of blind obedience. From this day forward, Silvercrest operates under the Matriarch's law." "What law?" Cade asked hoarsely. "The law of balance. Alphas serve the pack, not the other way around. Omegas are protected, not exploited. Strength is measured in honor, not violence. Fated bonds are sacred and never rejected without catastrophic cause." She leaned down, forcing him to meet her violet eyes. "And any Alpha who rules through fear, rather than earned respect, will answer to me. Personally." She straightened, addressing the entire assembly. "This territory, everything within 50 miles of the heart, is now neutral ground under the Matriarch's protection. Any wolf, regardless of pack or status, may seek sanctuary here. Any dispute that cannot be resolved within pack law comes to me." Her voice rang with authority. "I am Alara Moonstone, the Matriarch reborn, Queen of the Wild, and Mother of all wolves. This is my territory. These are my laws. Does anyone here challenge my claim?" Silence. Absolute, profound silence. Then Garrett threw his head back and howled, a sound of triumph and recognition and joy. The rest of the Shadow Guard joined him, 10 massive dire wolves, singing their allegiance to their queen. One by one, Even the Silvercrest wolves added their voices, unable to resist the call. Only when the last echo faded did Alara speak again. "Go. Return to your pack. Spread word of what happened here. And pray you never give me cause to visit Silvercrest in person." The dismissal was absolute. Cade rose stiffly, his face a mask of humiliation and shock. He gathered his party with a gesture and retreated beyond the boundary stones. Marissa left without looking back, still shaking from the forced introspection. The warriors followed, subdued and silent. Only Alara's parents remained. "Alara," her father began, "what happens to us?" "That depends." She studied them, these people who had given her life and then crippled it, who had loved her and betrayed her in equal measure. "You have a choice. You can return to Silvercrest and live with your shame, or you can stay here, in neutral territory, and work to earn forgiveness you may never receive." "We'll stay," her mother said immediately. "We'll do whatever it takes. We'll spend the rest of our lives making this right." "It will take lifetimes," Alara said quietly. "But I won't turn you away. You'll work under Theron's supervision. You'll help build the sanctuary, help establish the new order. You'll serve the very wolves you taught me to fear." She met her father's eyes. "And maybe, someday, we'll find a way to be family again. But not today." They nodded, understanding the mercy in her judgment, and allowed themselves to be led away by Theron. Garrett approached, returning to human form, and slipped his hand into hers. "You were magnificent." "I was merciful," Alara corrected. "There's a difference." "There is, and that's why you'll succeed where others failed." He squeezed her hand gently. "You lead with your heart as well as your strength." Alara looked out at her territory, at the ancient forest, the standing stones, the sanctuary where wolves of all ranks would soon come seeking protection and guidance. The work was just beginning. Changing centuries of toxic hierarchy wouldn't happen overnight. But she had time, power, and something no ruler in recent memory had possessed: genuine compassion. "What comes next?" Lyra asked, joining them with Marcus and the others falling into a loose circle around their queen. "We build," Alara said simply. "We establish trade routes, diplomatic channels, education systems. We teach young wolves that strength and kindness aren't mutually exclusive. We create a world where no child has to have their power bound out of fear, where no Omega is cast out for being too weak, where fated bonds are celebrated, not weaponized." "Ambitious," Marcus observed with a grin. "Necessary," Alara countered. She looked at each of her guard in turn. These 10 warriors who had given up everything to find her, who had believed in a prophecy when no one else did, who had shown her what true loyalty looked like. "And I can't do it alone. Will you stand with me? Not as guards, but as partners in building something better?" "Always," Garrett said, and the others echoed him with conviction that needed no elaboration. That night, as the moon rose full and silver over the sanctuary, Alara stood on the Great Hall's balcony and howled her claim for all the world to hear. From the forests, from the mountains, from territories near and far, wolves answered. Some in challenge, some in curiosity, but most in hope. The matriarch had returned, the balance was shifting, and nothing would ever be the same. And so Alara Moonstone's journey from rejected Omega to Queen of all Wolves reached its first triumph. What began in pain and humiliation transformed into power and purpose. She learned that true strength isn't about dominance, it's about lifting others, protecting the vulnerable, and leading with both fierceness and compassion. Her story reminds us that our lowest moments can shatter the chains we didn't even know were binding us, that the cruelty we survive can forge us into something unbreakable. That chosen family is every bit as powerful as blood. And that destiny delayed is not destiny denied. What did you think of Ilara's transformation? How would you have handled Cade's betrayal? And what laws would you establish if you were the matriarch? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading your perspectives. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit that like button and subscribe with notifications on, so you don't miss what happens next. Because this is only the beginning of Ilara's reign, and the challenges ahead will test her in ways she can't yet imagine. Threats are gathering in the shadows. Old enemies are planning their revenge, and something dark stirs beneath the next blood moon. Thank you for listening to Ilara's story. We'll see you in the next chapter, when the matriarch faces her greatest test yet. Until then, stay strong, stay fierce, and remember, you are so much more than the labels others try to place on you.